Alrighty, we got Father Matt Hartley with us today. Thank you so much for being here. We figured you guys were sick of seeing Jane and I just talking to you, so we figured we'd bring somebody else in, hopefully bump the viewership and the length at which you view as well. We're really excited to have Father here. How you been holding up in the quarantine?
Doing all right. It's a very different life as a priest right now. Seeing hardly anybody at church. Preaching to a screen, preaching to a camera is very weird. It's hard to get passionate. You're like, I am talking to no one.
Yeah.
So you just have to keep in your mind, okay, there's people online that are watching this or will watch this.
Yeah.
And that's been encouraging. There's been, upwards of 1,500 to 1,800 people watching the Mass videos, so that's kind of impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Because usually we have 2,000 people coming to church on Sundays, so it's good. It's very encouraging that there's people still participating, not just saying, hey, we don't have to be Catholic for 2 months. No, they're still living their faith.
Yeah. So we brought him in today because we wanted to do this topic on spirituality versus religion, or spirituality and religion, because I think it's pretty safe to say that in a lot of people's families, friends, they have somebody in their life who, if you ask them, if you probe them as far as their religious life, their belief, their faith, what it looks like, they'll often say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm a spiritual person. I feel God, in nature. I feel God in the mountains. And they kind of look at religion as it's this sort of legalistic, obligatory thing where it's just a bunch of rules and structures. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, what are your thoughts, if you just had to give a basic definition of religion, kind of expectations and experience, what that looks like?
Yeah, I think religion is going to include spirituality. Yeah. So it's a false dichotomy to say I'm either spiritual or religious. No, a true religious person is spiritual. But religion, also has not only the context of a spirituality, of a prayer, life, of some type of relationship with spiritual things. So I think of spirituality or some type of relationship with God, but also is going to have some type of structure to that includes how to live. What's the moral life look like? How do I interact with God? How do I interact with others? And so I think that's one of the dangers of this kind of separation of spirituality. Becomes just very selfish, self-focused. Maybe is the word of I'm my own pope. I decide what I want to believe, what morals I want to live, and what type of worship I want to live out. And religion, which can be a very good thing if it's established by God, has some structure to it, because our core central belief is that God has revealed himself.
Yeah.
That he has actually spoken to us saying, this is the truth, this is how I want you to interact with me, and this is how I want you to live. And when we divorce ourselves from revealed religion, then we just get man-made religion. And that's really what saying I'm spiritual, not religious, is just saying I've started my own religion. And I have my own rules, my own way of worshiping, my own designs to all of this. Yeah. And that's not compatible with revealed religion that said God's actually spoken to us and told us this is what we need to do.
I really just love that piece you just said, that it's forming your own religion. I don't think I've ever thought about it in that quantified term, that it's no, you're still being religious. You're still religious you treat these idols that we've sort of formed in our life, like perhaps even nature or physical fitness or video games or whatever, money. You treat that as an idol. That is just your God. That is the religion you're practicing. And I think that's an interesting and cool take. The other thing I wanted to point out and get to my next question is, when you mentioned structure, and I think that a lot of times when I have tried to defend religion to people is I look at it in the sense of, look at the way your life is ordered, your day is ordered. Human beings crave, not just biologically, but throughout the day, just on your schedule, we crave a structure, we crave a rhythm of our life, and that's what religion, especially look at the Catholic Church and the liturgical calendar, we have a structure, a rhythm. Do you think the human person is more inclined to the religious or to the spiritual? And obviously I don't mean to isolate them completely, but sort of the primary function of religion, the primary function of spirituality, do you think we're more inclined to one versus the other, or is it kind of just an even split?
Yeah, I guess I would argue that it's a false dichotomy. It's separating two things that were never meant to be separated, spirituality from religion. Because again, if what I'm saying is that people who say they're spiritual, not religious, they are religious. They're just their own religion.
Yeah.
Because they still have a morality. Well, I'm spiritual, so it doesn't matter whether I kill people. I don't think someone who's truly actually values spirituality would go that far to says I don't have any morality whatsoever, or I don't have any beliefs about anything. Well, then you're not spiritual. You're just agnostic. You just don't believe anything.
Yeah.
So I think people are designed by nature to have spiritual experiences. They have souls, and they have interaction with. Whether it's nature that makes them think of God, or whether it's the life of Christ that makes them think of God, there's always a spiritual component to us that then has to get defined. And if what do we look to define our experiences? What do we look to define this relationship with God? Do we look to just ourselves and our knowledge, which is more informed by movies and YouTube videos than God's revelation? And his established kingdom. So I would just emphasize that everybody is both spiritual and religious. What you're emphasizing, I think, is an important point, that our religion, the structure revolves around the life of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It doesn't revolve around just our feelings. Mm-hmm. What do I feel like doing today? Today I feel like going out into the mountains. Today I feel like watching a video. Today I feel like it doesn't revolve around ourselves. It revolves around the life of Christ. And so we celebrate the birth of Christ. We celebrate the transfiguration of Christ. We celebrate the passion and death and resurrection of Christ. Our masses, our worship, our sacraments, they all revolve around God himself, who has given us his own Son in Jesus Christ. And so it's constantly drawing us out of ourselves and our own selfishness and drawing us into the life of Christ, which is the very purpose of human life. Is to participate in the life of Christ, is to have union with God.
Yeah, and I think that especially when, it's an easy thing to go in nature and feel the presence of God. It's because he created it. It's really, really easy to do that. But I think it's just as easy, maybe just on the surface level, it doesn't seem as fun because you're losing some of the selfishness when you're partaking in a celebration like religion, like the Mass, specifically in our faith. To feel God in that as well, but because of that structure and because of that rhythm to our lives, and it's something that we're seeking for. But I do think you keep bringing up that point of selfishness that just stands out, because that seems like the barrier. It's if you experience God when you're fly fishing, it's like, well, where's the sacrifice in that? Like, what are you giving up? It is solely rooted in, well, I enjoy this, and I can also experience God, versus I enjoy this and I'm giving of myself to strive to be more like him and to follow his structure and his teachings.
Sure, yeah. I don't want to villainize people that are saying I'm spiritual, not religious, and saying, oh, they're all selfish people. That's not what I'm trying to say. I would say that mentality is a self-focused mentality. That is just saying, I'm going to base everything on my thoughts, my beliefs, my experience, and what I think, and of course, what we think has been formed by all the media and all the stuff we've taken in over our lives, rather than a Christ-focused. I want to be about worshiping Christ, and I want to be about following his teachings, rather than just my own thoughts. I want to follow what he's asked me to do, rather than what I feel like doing. So that self-focused versus Christ-focused, because that's the big core question: is Jesus the Son of God? And did he give us the Mass? Did he give us divine revelation? Yeah, I think it's easy to pray, and it's easy to go out in a big, the Grand Canyon or the mountains and have some experience of God, or seeing the night sky, because those are sensate-wise, visually inspiring scenes that can kind of wow us.
The shock factor,
Right. The Mass can give that same experience, but not necessarily on the eyes level. It has to be on the knowledge, faith level of saying, do I know what's going on here? There's, and it's the same with the ocean, for example. Someone could look at the ocean and be like, boring. It's like, you don't know what's going on. There's a whole world down there. And if you get your snorkel you get a different way of looking at the ocean. You actually enter into the ocean. You say, wow, there's whales and there's sharks and there's coral reefs and there's amazing chasms and all this amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Same with Mass. You've got to get your spiritual snorkel called faith and revelation and say, what is this? Is this just someone standing there and saying words? Or is this the sacrifice of Jesus Christ happening before me? And I just need to get the right vision to see it.
$1 million idea, spiritual snorkels. Okay, so with that, I think it's really important how you're discussing the overlap in which religion and spirituality have. Do you think, though, in and of themselves, if you're partaking in just religion or just spirituality, do you think there's fruit to bear, or is it something that like you have to learn how they communicate, how they overlap, and how to utilize both of them?
Yeah, you can't. If you just live religion without any type of spirituality, you're going to become a Pharisee. You're just heartless.
Yeah.
Right? There's no relationship in your religion. You're just following rules, going to church. That's not Catholicism. That's a dead form of a religion where you're not praying. Really, you're just following the motions. So, religion has to have spirituality as a part of it, and thankfully, Catholic spirituality is profoundly deep.
Yeah.
Is amazing. You think of when the Catholic teaching on the spiritual life and on the stages of the spiritual life and Catholic mysticism of writings like St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila and the different lives of the saints, it's awe-inspiring. So these are people that are going to daily Mass, they're praying hours a day, they're following the teachings of the Church, they're canonized saints, but had profoundly deep spiritual lives that are amazing, and they're far deeper than anything you're ever going to experience going out in the mountains or going out in the forest. Because the mountains are created by God, but they're not God. And so their spirituality is focusing on the person of Jesus Christ, not just, I'm going to go out in the mountains and I'm going to thank God, which is great, a great way of praying. Catholics should do that. Everybody should thank God for creation. But they're saying, no, I want to actually enter into the person and have a deep relationship with the person of Jesus Christ. And that can take you a lot farther than some nebulous creation-based spirituality.
Yeah, I love that. That the mountains and the ocean and all these things are created by God. So yeah, you'll feel God and you'll be able to bask in that awe and wonder. But they're not God. I love that point. To take it kind of in a little different direction, I wanted to ask, especially those of you who are going to be listening to this, your family members, your friends who maybe aren't on sort of the religion. They don't understand religion. They view it as a legalistic, sort of what we mentioned at the beginning. Do you think it's more dangerous for a person to be resistant to religion and be like against religion, or to be apathetic towards it? Because I think in culture, for a while it was like this anti-religion movement, this idea that like, oh, they're just like sort of what you mentioned with the Pharisees. They're just kind of in the pews. They're not actually practicing it. They're hypocrites, yada, that sort of thing. But then now there's almost this apathetic view where people have, they almost don't even see any validity in it. Do you think one of them is more dangerous than the other?
I think they kind of go hand in hand. There's kind of maybe two sides to the same coin. One you're not gonna have one without the other. So apathy, saying, I don't care. That's very rampant on college campuses. We'd go, to try to talk to people about Jesus Christ, but I'm good. There's an apathy of like, I'm just thinking about other things. I just don't really care about that, and that can lead to a lot of downfall to the person. Eventually, I think if they go down the path of sin and selfishness, hopefully they're going to eventually realize that that's empty and meaningless and it won't work, and then start to care. But a lot of damage can happen to the person in their lives before they have that realization, like I did. I realized in college, this isn't working. I was not caring about God, just pursuing the pleasures of life and the worldly things and jobs and college and money and all that stuff, and it's just like, this isn't working. But in our world right now, you have the crowd that are apathetic, but they're usually mingling with the crowd that just turns to hatred. Yeah. Because the hatred comes from, religion's telling me I'm doing something wrong. I don't want to feel bad about what I'm doing because I'm number one, therefore I'm going to attack those who are, even if they're not saying anything to me personally, just by their existence, are a witness against me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that can lead to lots of violence, as we see in our world, where it's not just, hey, you have your opinion and I have my opinion. It rarely stays there. It often quickly devolves into, your opinion makes me feel bad, therefore I'm going to label it as hate speech.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're being evil and hurtful to me by even existing with your opinion, because it's standing in contradiction. So I don't know. It seems like they're two sides of the same coin. The hatred obviously is going to lead to a lot more violence, but the apathy will do a lot of damage to the person.
Yeah, and I think that question sort of comes from this place of we look back in our church's history and in the history of Christianity in itself, and you can look at these marquee figures, saints in the Catholic Church, but also someone like C.S. Lewis, who, because of his disdain for Christianity, it prompted a probing into it, because I needed to disprove, and obviously God did his work, and it revealed to them, whereas sometimes a lukewarm or an apathetic view is more like a numbness to it. Sure. And you're not going to have that research, you're not going to have the effort poured into disproving it. But I get what you're saying is, seldomly are they in two separate camps. They're together, they're mingling together, because no one is, there's not a structure or a rule or a morality that's telling them they're wrong when they're that they're safe there.
Sure. I see what you're saying. I mean, it's scriptural. I wish that you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out of my mouth. In the Book of Revelation, and so that that's, I guess I agree with you. That's that the lukewarmness can damage that individual person's life in a very substantial way, because they make all these decisions that have negative consequences until they realize, wow, this is not working. I guess my point was the hatred for religion, which is being fostered in our world, can do more damage on a global scale, and lead to a lot of more negative consequences, where you have, no, you're not allowed to live your faith on this college campus, you're not allowed to say that on this campus, you're not allowed to live this way and do these things.
The whole tolerance, the whole issue with tolerance. Tolerance is the key, is the crown jewel of the secular society, and we must be tolerant. We must be tolerant. As Christians, we're not called to be tolerant. We're called to love. And
tolerance is never tolerance. That's the problem. Let everybody just believe what they want and do as they say. It never is that way. It's always going to devolve into, you don't get to believe that. You're only tolerated if you align with me.
Yeah.
So the people that are not Catholic, that are trying to spout these these virtues of tolerance, are often the very least tolerant people. So I think it's not a virtue, and it never stays that way. We see that in our college campuses, in our universities, in our schools. Nope, you're not allowed to do that. Oh, you want to say that you're pro-life? You're going to fail this class. It's not tolerance doesn't exist there.
Yeah, I had personal experiences with that too, after getting out of the military, and sometimes in college with different professors, and I'm not one to not speak my mind, so I got into a few verbal tussles with a professor or two. The last question I want to talk about, so I remember a few years ago, I think it might be closer to 7 or 8 now, there was this video that came out, I don't know if you ever saw it, this whole I love Jesus, but I hate religion, and it kind of took the world by storm. It was millions of views, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this, because I think that is where a lot of people, a lot of Christians, non-Catholic Christians, kind of find themselves in this, I'm desiring a personal relationship with Jesus, but Jesus wasn't religious, and we obviously know that's not true. I mean, the Bible, the Gospels prove that it's very demonstrative of Jesus living a religious life. But I want to get your thoughts on that, and can you is there a path to having Jesus without religion?
Yeah, I've seen the video, and there's a good Catholic video by Father Pontifex, who's a rapper who's I love Jesus and religion, or Jesus loves religion, I think it is on YouTube. Jesus established a religion. God, Jesus is the second person of the Trinity, he is God. He established the Old Testament with a series of covenants, these bonds, these ways of existing, laws and commandments and feasts in the Old Testament. That was not only a spirituality of, this is I want you to have a relationship with me. You will be my people, and I will be your God. But it had religious ways of existing, right? This is how you're going to be my people. Follow these ways. And Jesus said he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. So what does he do? He establishes a new covenant. He doesn't say, we're getting rid of all those covenants. He establishes a new covenant in his blood, the Eucharist, and says, do this in remembrance of me, which is where we get the Mass. He establishes a new commandment. He doesn't do away with the commandments. He does away with a lot of the ritualistic laws of the Old Testament, because now we have the new law. But he doesn't do away with the Ten Commandments. He doesn't do away with morality. He still says, don't kill, honor your mother and father. He still says, love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemy. He raises the bar on morality. So what this person is trying to emphasize is the personal relationship. And of course, as Catholics, we have a personal relationship with Jesus. We consume Jesus in the Eucharist. It doesn't get more personal than that.
Hear that. Like pause at that moment and hear that, because there's some misconceptions that Catholics, we don't have a relationship with Jesus. We're not called to.
Yeah.
Father just said it, so we are, and we do.
Our relationship with Jesus is supposed to be massively more personal than anything else on the planet.
Yeah.
Because we're revolving around the Eucharist, that's Jesus himself, body, blood, soul, and divinity. We're receiving him into us. All of Catholic spirituality, all of the Catholic prayer life, teachings on prayer, are profoundly personal. But did Jesus give us a way of living? Yes. Well, we could call that part of religion, the way of living. Instead of, did he say, just do whatever you feel like? No, he gives us commandments. He gives us ways of living. Love your neighbor, love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you, turn the other cheek, And does he give us a way of interacting with him through the sacraments? Or is it just pray? No, he says, he who believes and is baptized will be saved. Unless you're born of water and spirit, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you cannot have life within you. He eats my flesh and drinks my blood as eternal life. And so he establishes the sacraments, these graced ways of interacting with him, so that he can bring those graces to our soul. Because we have bodies and souls, and so he establishes a visible and spiritual body called the church, so that we can know his revelation, his truth, we can know the way he wants us to live, and we can know how to receive graces from him through the sacraments. The video is very popular amongst non-Catholic Christians, because one of the foundational differences between Catholics and non-Catholic Christians or Protestants is, as Catholics, we believe that God is bringing graces to us, not just through faith, but through the sacraments. It calls us to do works, to actually live a life of charity and love. And one of the temptations that Martin Luther fell into was to say, no, it's only by faith that we're saved. What you do means nothing, because that was based on a belief that the human person is just completely corrupt. There's no way to fix that, so what you do doesn't matter. You just need to accept Jesus by faith, and he just covers you.
Yeah.
And so he had a line that was very strong, and I think most Catholics would be like, no. He said, sin boldly and believe all the more boldly. That's how far he took this, it doesn't matter how you live.
Yeah.
Just have faith. And that's the danger of that mentality of, I want Jesus and I don't want religion, is I just want my own personal beliefs, it doesn't matter what I do. And the only time the scriptures talk about faith alone is when they condemn faith alone, in the Epistle of James. Yes. He says, faith without works is dead. Yes. That if you say you believe and you're not living it, you're a liar. That's not true. You can't say I love God, but I don't do anything he says. I don't respect him. I just live according to my own beliefs. That's a dichotomy. That's not how relationships work. Relationships have rules, whether they're written or unwritten. You're married. It probably isn't a written rule in the house anywhere, don't spit in my face.
Yeah.
But that's obvious. If you love your spouse, you're not going to do that.
You're not going to go around spitting on each other.
Right? Relationships always have rules with them about what's respectful to this relationship. Yeah. How do you treat this other person because they have dignity? Otherwise, again, you're back to this self-focused, I'll treat you however I feel like treating you, because ultimately, I'm only going to do what I feel like doing, and then God's over there as some kind of whenever I feel like it, he's over there as just the pillow. When I feel like having a pillow, I'll get my pillow, but your pillow's under your control.
Yeah.
And instead of God is in control, and I want to live the way He wants me to live.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Father Matt, for being here. If you guys have any, before I hand it over, just finding final thoughts from Father, if you guys have any questions or comments or want to expand on any of these ideas that Father talked about, send them our way in the video. But if not, Father, you got any final last words?
Last words. I would just say I'm very proud of you guys for persevering in your faith, trying to live out your faith right now. It's really different because it's really difficult because times are so different and everybody's staying at home, and so those of you who are choosing to pray, choosing to read the scriptures, choosing to be involved in youth group even virtually, choosing to watch the Mass, that's awesome. And just the Lord loves you, and He has so many graces to pour out. I know it's a difficult time right now, but persevere. And the Masses are being celebrated, and we can join in, even if they're from miles away. The Lord still is real, He still exists, and He still has graces to give you. So don't get wrapped up in too much Fortnite. Seek the Lord Jesus.
You know who He's talking to. You get it.
I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
I've cut back on my Fortnite. I've given up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you again, Father, for being here. We miss you guys. God bless. I hope you enjoy this video.